She was still bending down, zipping up her boots, not the worn ones she used to wear to the grocery store, but the sharp, black leather ones with narrow heels and even narrower intention, when she dropped the sentence like a piece of glass that she wasn't planning to clean up. "I'm going on a date with Andrew," she said, in a voice so unnaturally sweet it could have passed for a bedtime story, not the kind you tell a husband of nearly 3 decades, but the kind you use to placate a small child before stepping out of the room and locking the door behind you. "Don't wait up." I stood there by the sink, hands submerged in the lukewarm water, the remnants of the dinner I had prepared still clinging to the porcelain, lemon-glazed salmon, her favorite, or at least the dish she used to pretend was. I didn't speak. Not immediately. Because what do you say when someone who used to cry at your jokes now smiles like you're a stranger she's about to ghost? Her reflection in the microwave door caught my eye clearer than I expected, and somehow that startled me more than her words. Her lipstick was just a little too red, not quite her usual wine-berry tone, but bolder, louder, like something meant for a stranger's approval. Around her neck hung the delicate silver chain I hadn't seen since our 10th anniversary trip to Bar Harbor, the one she told me she lost while repacking her suitcase. She wore the green top, the deep V-neck one, that she used to say made her collarbones look like art. She only wore that top when she wanted attention, the kind that lingers, that wanders, that doesn't belong to the man doing the dishes. And those heels. God, those heels. Not the flats she wore when we went to the market, or the sneakers she lived in while pretending to do yoga, but the ones that clicked on the hardwood with purpose, each step like a countdown towards something I was never invited to understand. She hadn't worn those heels since our anniversary dinner, the one where she spent most of the time scrolling through her phone and calling the restaurant decor divorced woman energy. And I, like a fool, had complimented her dress and ordered her favorite drink and smiled through it all as though I didn't notice the way she winced every time I tried to hold her hand. I didn't say a word then, just kept rinsing the dishes, letting the water numb my fingers while something much colder began to take root deeper inside me. A pulse of clarity. A shift. A click. I'd cooked that dinner, salmon with the same lemon glaze she had once pretended to love, and she didn't even sit long enough to finish it. Her plate was still half full when she stood up, claiming she wasn't hungry, and now here she was strutting past me like she was walking a courtroom runway, as though she were the judge and I was the exhibit she had already decided to dismiss. That's when I moved. I dried my hands slowly, purposefully, the cotton towel sliding between my fingers like the closing scene of a play that had gone on too long. Then I said it. Not loudly, not with fire or bitterness, just a flat note, a clean break. "I won't. That's all." And that was when she stumbled. Just for a second, one heel caught the edge of the rug near the doorway, and her posture faltered the tiniest bit. But then, like it had been rehearsed, she caught herself, straightened, and tilted her head with that condescending smirk she had perfected over years of corporate meetings and cold goodnights. "You always say weird things when you're upset," she muttered, like she was reading a weather report, like nothing in the atmosphere had changed. But she paused, and that pause, that was all I needed, because I wasn't upset. Not the way she expected, not in the way she wanted, the way that would validate her role as the misunderstood wife and paint me as the broken man clutching old photo albums on the couch. I was done. Done with the gaslighting, the guilt-tripping, the whispered late-night phone calls answered behind closed doors while she claimed they were just work emergencies. Done with the clever redirections every time I found a strange charge on the card or an unfamiliar name in her call log. Done with the way she dismissed every gut instinct I had as overthinking. Carol left at 6:12 p.m. I stood in the kitchen long after the taillights of the Lexus faded down the street. There was lipstick on the rim of her wine glass on the counter. I didn't move it. Instead, I walked to the spare room, my office, the one she never liked, the one she mockingly called my bat cave because I preferred it quiet and untouched. I sat down in front of the old ThinkPad. The one she used to laugh at, your old man box, she'd call it, like it was some kind of relic I clung to because I was afraid of change. She had no idea what was in that laptop. She never cared to learn the password. 20 characters long. Random. Meaningless to anyone but me. I typed it in with steady fingers, and the screen came to life. Not with spreadsheets or grocery lists, but with archives. Emails, documents, bank statements, travel logs, cloud backups. A spreadsheet labeled cabin expenses stared back at me like a knowing friend. She never once asked why I insisted on keeping the lake property in Michigan. Thought I was being sentimental. Thought I was a fool clinging to a moldy shoebox in the woods. But I wasn't clinging. I was preparing. At 6:27 p.m., I opened a new message. To Victor L. Kennedy, my attorney, the man who still sent holiday cards and billed by the quarter hour. Subject line. Time to activate the clause. I attached a file. Compressed. Encrypted. Labeled. Severance_1.zip. Then I hit send. Closed the laptop with no ceremony. Because the truth is, by the time you realize something has collapsed, the structure's been crumbling for years. And the funny thing about logistics is that no disaster is ever truly sudden. It's just that you weren't watching the right calendar. The door didn't slam when she left. It clicked. Softly. Casually. As if she were stepping out for milk. As if I wasn't supposed to notice. No glance back. No second thought. Only a faint whiff of her perfume, Chanel No. 5, lingering in the hallway like a warning label on a prescription bottle. She didn't take a coat, but she took her phone charger, her black clutch, and the keys to the Lexus. Left just enough behind to make it feel like she'd return. Just enough to pretend it wasn't goodbye. But I knew better. Because Carol never said goodbye. She said later, and assumed she'd still own the room when she walked back in. She didn't know, not yet, that by the time she returned, the room would be different. And so would I. The guest bedroom was rarely touched, a neutral space she used to refer to as the spare, as though it didn't belong to either of us but existed in some gray area between marriage and staging, and yet it had become mine in all the ways that mattered. It was the only room she didn't redecorate, the only space she didn't smother in scented candles or dried eucalyptus, the only one where my quiet wasn't something to fix. And in the bottom drawer of the nightstand, tucked beneath expired manuals, faded takeout menus, and 2 remote controls that hadn't worked since 2018, sat the object she believed she had outlived, her old tablet. Cracked in the corner, scuffed along the sides, its soft gray case dulled with age and faint smudges of foundation from nights she used it in bed, claiming she was reading work emails long after midnight. She thought it was dead. She thought a factory reset meant forgetting. She thought I was the one who didn't understand how these things worked. But I was the one who set it up in the first place. I was the one who linked it to our cloud. And when she stopped syncing it, I didn't. I held the power button a few seconds longer than usual, felt the subtle vibration as it flickered awake, and waited while the fractured screen glowed to life, illuminating the quiet little lies she thought she'd buried in digital dust. It was slow to respond, the way old devices are when you treat them like relics, but it remembered. The home screen loaded with lazy hesitation, and there it was, her backup messaging app. The one she once claimed was just for her book club. The password. Our old dog's name, misspelled. Of course. Messages populated gradually, as if even the tablet hesitated to reveal the truth. Most of them were harmless, chain texts from acquaintances, dinner plans with girlfriends I hadn't seen in years, reminders from services she never used. But one thread sat at the top, bolded in contemptuous silence. Andrew M. VX. The closure. Funny how closure always looks like eyeliner, whispers in hotel bathrooms, and ends with a backseat confession at 2 a.m. I tapped the thread. Her texts to him weren't romantic. They were juvenile. Overpunctuated nonsense, dripping with fake youthfulness. Endless winks and LOL you're so bad, and heart emojis scattered like confetti in a conversation neither of them had the dignity to treat like adults. Dozens of photos, all framed for seduction, always with a wine glass, always angled, always filtered, and captions that read like high school bathroom graffiti. Sneaky break. Guess where I am again? Winky face. Kiss you later. Then there was the video. No caption. Just 13 seconds. I didn't hesitate. I tapped it, and the screen filled with her face, poorly lit, but familiar. Her voice came first, quiet but intentional. She was in a bathroom stall, tiles behind her polished in a way that screamed artificial elegance. She held the phone low, grinning into the camera with the same look she used to give waiters when she wanted something for free. "He's so pathetic lately," she whispered, voice soft and dripping with contempt. "This almost feels like mercy." Then she winked, and the screen went black. I didn't react. Not physically. I didn't shout. Didn't hurl the tablet against the wall. Didn't crumble to my knees in heartbreak. I just stood there, holding it like an evidence folder. My reflection stared back from the now dark screen, hollow, silent, unshaken. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I had already stopped loving her the day I started documenting her. I rewatched it. Twice. Paused on the wink. Captured a still frame. Saved the file. Folder name, Mercy_clip. Then I opened a secure drive on my laptop, the ThinkPad, the one she called my museum piece, and stored the clip beneath 4 levels of encryption, signed digitally, time-stamped, labeled, and mirrored to 2 backups. Because that wink would follow her longer than any perfume. It would whisper louder than any apology. Then, without ceremony, I slid the tablet back into the drawer, placed it gently beneath the old manuals and the dead remotes. Let her think it was still broken. Let her believe it no longer mattered. The thing about pain at its most potent is that it doesn't explode. It calculates. It learns the locks. It files the receipts. And I had plenty. The lake cabin, the shoebox, as she once mocked it, was never just a retreat to me. It was never about trees and solitude and outdated furniture. It was a firewall, a contingency plan in flannel and snow tires. She stopped visiting after 2019. Too cold, too remote. No cell service, no brunch spots. Nothing up there but dust and your crusty hobbies, she'd said, flipping through a Pottery Barn catalog while I packed for one of my long weekends alone. She never asked why I kept going back, why I upgraded the insulation, why I installed solar panels and paid cash for a Scandinavian wood stove, why I routed fiber internet to a location no one was supposed to care about. Because she didn't notice the zoning change, didn't see that the land around it had quietly been reclassified as potential development property, didn't realize its value had tripled. She laughed when I called it an asset. I was building a vault. That morning, while she was probably sipping mimosas at a rooftop brunch, giggling into her phone while pretending to fix Andrew's broken ego, I walked into the local bank branch, wearing khakis and a flannel shirt, looking every bit the retired man managing his harmless investments. The branch manager, a man in his 30s who wore too much hair product and smiled like he practiced in the mirror, greeted me like I was an old tree he had to politely avoid cutting down. "Mr. Harland, here for your appointment?" I nodded, handed him a folder. Inside, updated trust paperwork. Signed 3 years ago. Contingency clauses triggered by infidelity or misappropriation of funds. All notarized. All legal. I said nothing as he flipped through the pages, his eyes occasionally darting toward me like he was trying to figure out if I knew exactly what I was doing. I did. He asked, gently, "Is this in response to any particular situation?" I smiled. Not at him, just at the air. He processed it in silence. The cabin was now out of her reach, out of our marital trust, filed under a newly established protection trust, of which I was sole beneficiary and trustee, titled to a private LLC. registered in a state she didn't know we'd ever done business in. She thought I was escaping. I was securing, and I wasn't even close to finished. It was sometime around mid-afternoon when I made my way into the garage, not for tools or a reason to escape, but because it was the last remaining space in the house where her presence hadn't been repackaged into aesthetics. The garage still carried the faint, dry scent of pine cleaner and old motor oil, mixed with the dusty neutrality of cardboard, masking tape, and the quiet lies of organization. Her handwriting still labeled every box, in all caps Sharpie with forced cheer, holiday, winter coats, don't touch, as if putting something in a box somehow preserved it from reality, or worse, from consequence. I wasn't looking for anything in particular. I just needed to open something. That's when my phone vibrated in my pocket. Not a text, but a FaceTime call, which was rare in itself, and even stranger when I saw the name across the screen. Natalie, her niece. The one from Carol's side who used to send me birthday texts with too many emojis, who stayed quiet during family dinners when the snide remarks started, who once told me, in passing, that I reminded her of someone she trusted. I answered, expecting small talk or a question about car insurance. Not what came next. Uncle Mark, are you busy? I looked around the garage, at the sagging boxes and stale air. Only with ghosts, I said. She gave me a nervous smile, then angled her phone camera to show her own screen, a screenshot she had saved just minutes earlier. It was from Carol's Instagram story, a photo, carefully filtered, of a sunset from some rooftop bar I didn't recognize. Golden light, cocktail in hand, a view that screamed curated freedom. But it was the caption that made my stomach tighten without warning. Finally breathing again, butterfly. And beneath it, a comment that wasn't meant for family to see. Andrew M. We made it out, red heart. Natalie's voice softened. She deleted it right after. But I saw it. I thought you guys were okay. I didn't flinch. Didn't sigh. I looked at the screenshot like it was a stock photo in a dentist's waiting room. Bland, unreal, completely disconnected from anything human. Then I asked calmly, how long ago was this posted? About 40 minutes? Maybe less. Of course it was. Carol was always quick with the cleanup, never out of guilt, just out of habit. She didn't delete to erase. She deleted to control the narrative. Drop the grenade, then bury the pin. I thanked Natalie. Told her she did the right thing showing me. But I didn't tell her everything. Not about the tablet, not about the video, not about the claws. She didn't need to know. She deserved to stay untainted by what was coming. Before the call ended, she said something quiet, barely audible. Is something happening? I could have told her everything. The betrayal, the digital trail, the quiet inventory of her aunt's deceit. I could have listed the items, one by one, like a museum curator cataloging decay. But I didn't. I only said, it's handled. She nodded, bit her lip, ended the call with a soft, love you. I stood in the garage for another moment, feeling the silence shift again, then opened my encrypted legal thread on my phone, a folder Carol never knew existed. I forwarded the screenshot directly to Victor Kennedy. Subject line, additional material, ongoing conduct. I added a note beneath it in plain, methodical text. Implication of cohabitation. Timestamp 2:04 p.m. phrase, we made it out, may constitute informal admission of collusion and premeditated separation. Then I hit send. No emotion, no rush. Just another tile laid into the quiet corridor of her own undoing. After that, I did something small. Something irrelevant to her, but symbolic to me. I opened a box I hadn't touched in over a decade. Inside was a ceramic angel ornament Carol once bought from a farmer's market in Vermont. She used to laugh at it, called it tacky cute, said it reminded her of a souvenir from a church gift shop. One year, She tried to hang it with fishing wire, and it fell behind the tree. Its wing cracked. I glued it back. Quietly. Like always. Now I held it one last time. Then dropped it into the trash. Because sentimentality is only valuable when it's mutual. Then I went inside and brewed myself a cup of coffee. Not because I needed caffeine, but because I needed the ritual. The sound. The smell. Something stable. Because the game I was playing wasn't revenge. It wasn't rage. It was documentation. It was alignment. It was leverage. And while she posted sunsets to strangers and whispered affirmations to men who didn't know how to use a dishwasher, I was just making sure that the air she would one day breathe again belonged to me. Carol always said she was the spine of the office, not the face, not the glossy smile that charmed clients or closed deals, but the unseen vertebrae that kept things standing, the one who made things run and knew where all the bodies were buried, as she liked to joke after her second glass of wine. What she never understood, what she couldn't have imagined, was that spines, for all their quiet strength, have a pressure point. And when you find it, they don't creak or groan. They snap, cleanly, silently, like a twig under snow. It was a Thursday when I pulled the footage. I didn't even have to look hard. Our home setup was modest, a standard Nest camera system we installed years ago after someone rifled through her car in the driveway, and she became convinced we were being watched. Irony wears long coats and lingers in doorways, because while she was busy suspecting strangers, she forgot the cameras ran silently, night after night, uploading their little truths to a cloud she never bothered to access. I wasn't searching for drama. I was looking for precision. Friday night, 11:18 p.m. 2 weeks ago, I found her on the footage. Not with Andrew, at least not visibly, but arriving home, alone, which in this case was worse. She came in through the front door like someone who had just passed a test she didn't study for and still aced. Heels in one hand, clutch in the other, laughing. Not at something, just laughing. She dropped her bag on the kitchen island, not gently, and pulled out a half-empty bottle of wine she must have taken from the restaurant. Not one she bought, one she took. She poured herself a glass, no coaster, no pause, and talked. Not to anyone, but to the air, to herself, to whatever version of herself needed reassurance. God, she said, spinning slightly before collapsing onto the arm of the couch, like a teenager home after curfew. Used another sick day for that trip. Then she laughed. Alone. Bitterly. If they only knew. HR's gonna fire HR. She sipped again. Deep. Careless. I mean, whatever. They owe me. Those boring-ass quarterly reviews. All that forced wellness crap. I earned that little escape. Then the phrase that mattered. And Andrew needed it too. Poor guy's so tense. Wound up like a goddamn spring. I scrubbed through the footage again, back and forth. Her voice was unmistakably clear. No slurring, no ambiguity, no plausible deniability. Just full sentences. Full awareness. A confession made to no one because she thought no one was listening. I clipped the footage. From 11 hours, 17 minutes and 40 seconds to 11 hours, 21 minutes and 5 seconds. Saved it. Labeled it. Stamped it. Then I opened my email. Recipient, hr@corinthian-group.com. Subject, confidential conduct concern, employee use of sick leave. I didn't include a long message. I didn't threaten or explain or justify. I simply embedded the clip in the email, along with a note. As a concerned third party, I believe this material may be relevant to internal policy. Appears to show employee under influence while admitting to misuse of sick leave for unsanctioned personal travel. If this has been previously documented, please disregard. SW. I didn't sign it Stephen. Not Mark. Not her husband. Just initials. Enough to be formal. Distant. Clean. I hit send. No fireworks. No explosion, just the soft digital thud of a door quietly locking behind someone who didn't know they'd left anything behind. An hour later, the email autoresponse changed. From, "Thank you for your message. It has been received." To, "Thank you for contacting Human Resources. Your concern will be addressed accordingly." No name, no follow-up, just protocol. Carol always claimed her department was a tight-knit circle. Apparently, that circle had just tightened without her. Later that night, I heard the ping of her phone upstairs. I hadn't turned off alerts. I hadn't locked her out. Not yet. She'd get the message. Maybe not immediately. Maybe not until she tried to log into her employee dashboard and found a redirect. Maybe not until her badge flashed red in the elevator lobby. But she'd get it. Because HR doesn't fire people with megaphones. They do it with euphemisms, with phrases like ongoing review and internal realignment. I poured myself a whiskey, not in celebration, not in bitterness, just to mark the moment, to acknowledge it. Because this wasn't revenge. This wasn't payback. This was accounting. And the books were starting to balance. When the Lexus finally pulled back into the driveway, it moved slower than usual, hesitant, like even the car sensed something had shifted, like it no longer recognized its place in the picture. Carol sat behind the wheel with her lips pressed together in a tight line, chewing either gum or anxiety. It was hard to tell from the window. She didn't look at the house like someone returning home. She looked at it the way you glance at a stranger who seems familiar, but not in a good way. Not a shared memory kind of way, but aware of as soon once of it does it feel wrong way. Everything looked the same. The shutters she never painted, the porch light that flickered when the wind hit it just right, the flower pot she always meant to throw out but never did. It was all still there, but it didn't welcome her. Not anymore. She hit the garage door opener. Nothing happened. She hit it again, raised her hand out the window, and pointed the remote toward the sensor like a magic wand. Still nothing. That was her first clue. She parked on the street, gathered her clutch and her phone. No overnight bag, just entitlement, and walked up the path in those same heels, clicking against the pavement like defiant punctuation. Then came clue number 2. She shoved her key into the front door and twisted. It didn't budge. Not jammed. Not stuck. Replaced. Her expression changed, just barely, from confusion to calculation. That tiny wrinkle between her eyebrows, the one I used to kiss when she was stressed, folded inward like a crumpling blueprint. She didn't knock, didn't call. She spotted the envelope on the doormat almost instantly, taped down with blue painter's tape, the kind she always said looked cheap. The kind I used every time I touched up walls she never noticed. She peeled the tape like she was afraid the house itself might flinch. Inside, a single typed letter. One page. Carol, this home is no longer your residence. Your name has been legally removed from the deed, the accounts, and the utilities as permitted under the prenuptial agreement, reaffirmed and signed by both parties on September 10th, 2016. Your personal belongings have been boxed and stored. Delivery instructions will follow via counsel. Do not attempt entry. All attempted access is monitored and recorded. Stephen. Handwritten at the bottom, in ink. Bedroom closet. Third shelf. I didn't have to be there to know how she reacted. I could see it in my mind with surgical clarity. The way her lips would press together, the way her fingers would tremble but pretend they weren't. The way her jaw would tighten not in fear but in disbelief, because for the first time in years, she wasn't the one who left. She tried the side gate next. She always knew it stuck. Knew the latch could be lifted with a coat hanger if you angled it just right. She used to do it when she locked herself out. She joked once that the house always lets me back in. Not this time. But she got in. Of course she did. She knew the weak spots, the sliding door in the back that never quite sealed, the guest room window that jimmied with a flathead screwdriver. She entered the house she no longer owned like a ghost returns to a scene, not to haunt, but to see what remains. She didn't pause at the mantel, didn't look at the family photos, didn't stop in the hallway where she used to drop her heels and sigh about her boss. She went straight upstairs, straight to the closet, straight to the third shelf. And there it was, a single manila folder, unsealed, waiting. Inside, a full printed transcript of her 13-second video from the bathroom stall. The exact words, timestamped, pixel locked, documented. He's so pathetic lately. This almost feels like mercy. A printed copy of her signed prenuptial agreement. Section 6B, forfeiture of marital assets in the event of infidelity or intentional emotional misconduct. She didn't cry. She shook, because she finally understood. The garage didn't open because it wasn't hers. The door didn't turn because she didn't belong. No one had called because this wasn't a warning. This was a verdict. This wasn't an argument, not a conversation, not a dramatic confrontation with accusations and shouting and tears on the staircase. It was done, executed, filed, stamped. The bedroom still looked the same, but even the dust on her nightstand felt like it belonged to someone else now. She sat on the edge of the bed, her side, and for the first time, noticed what was missing. The wedding photo. Not torn, not burned, just gone, erased like an outdated file. No need to destroy it, just delete it. And she didn't have to ask who removed it. She already knew. Because people who always think they're leaving never consider what happens when they're the ones being left. She didn't drive straight to her sister's house. That would have made sense. That would have meant facing it. Instead, she parked 2 blocks away, at the corner of a cul-de-sac we once walked together on Sunday evenings, back when Sunday evenings still felt like endings, not evidence. She sat in the Lexus with the engine off and the cabin lights low, scrolling her phone with the kind of trembling fingers usually reserved for funerals or test results. The screen was too bright for the darkness around her. She didn't cry. Not yet. She didn't rage. Not yet. She stared at the text thread, flicking through her contacts like maybe there was someone left who would answer. But most people had gone quiet. Not out of judgment, not yet, but out of discomfort. A social pause. The same kind that happens when someone laughs a little too hard at a joke that wasn't funny, and you realize they might not be laughing at all. Her final Instagram story, finally breathing again butterfly, still sat there in the archive. Frozen, unliked, unshared, stale. She called her sister. Jenna answered on the 6th ring. Not with concern, not with warmth. Just her name. Carol. Not hey, sis. Not what's going on. Just Carol. Carol cleared her throat, tried to find that voice she used when negotiating extensions with clients or excusing herself from dinner parties with invented migraines. Hey, Jen, things are just a little crazy right now. I might need to crash with you for a couple of nights. Just until Steven, I don't know, cools down. Silence. Then Jenna said something Carol hadn't heard from her in years, something quiet, but precise. He doesn't sound like the one who lost control. That sentence alone hit Carol harder than any locked door. What? We saw the post, Jenna continued. The one you deleted. The one with Andrew. Carol tried to cut in. It was just a quote. You know how social media. We also saw the clip, Jenna interrupted. Calm. Measured. Carol stopped breathing. What clip? You know which one. The bathroom video. The one you sent Andrew. The one where you said Steven was pathetic. That it felt like mercy. Carol's throat went dry. He sent that to you? No. Not directly, Jenna said. It got forwarded through someone at work. My friend saw it in an internal email chain. She didn't even realize it was you until she saw the name in the report folder. Carol opened her mouth, closed it again. The air in the Lexus was too warm now, pressing in on her like a coat she didn't ask to wear. You're spying on me now? Jenna's voice didn't change. No, You lied to us, and you used us to justify it. Carol blinked. That's not fair. You said he was cold, controlling, that he isolated you, that he wouldn't let you have anything of your own. Carol looked down at her lap, at her phone, at the silence that was quickly replacing all her defenses. You didn't mention the offshore account, Jenna said. The silence that followed was so heavy it bent the space between them. What are you talking about? The one under your name. The one you opened using a consulting shell. The one that was quietly drawing from Stephen's retirement distributions. Carol's voice was barely audible now. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, Jenna said flatly. You do. And then came the sentence Carol never expected to hear from her sister. Don't come here. There was no anger in it. Just finality. I don't trust you anymore. The line went dead. Carol stared at her screen, still lit up with Jenna's contact photo. A smiling beach picture from a family vacation 3 summers ago. Her sister had always answered. Even when Carol was awful. Even when she criticized Jenna's choices, her clothes, her husband. Jenna had always answered. Until now. Carol didn't cry. Still, she just sat in the dark car with her phone in her lap, and a long silence wrapping around her like fog. And for the first time, maybe in her entire adult life, she couldn't think of a single person who would say, "Come in. Let me help you fix this." Because the only person who knew about the offshore account, the only person she had told, was Andrew. And Andrew? He wasn't picking up either. The restaurant was one of those places that didn't just take your coat. It took your posture. Dim lighting, linen napkins, soft jazz playing through hidden speakers, and waitstaff trained to speak in hushed tones as though every table were a high-stakes negotiation. Carol walked in at 6:58 p.m., exactly 2 minutes early for a 7 o'clock reservation made under my name, in my voice, using the number she used to text me from before she decided someone else's jacket felt better on her shoulders. She wore the navy dress, the one I bought her for our 20th anniversary, the one she once said made her feel too much like a wife. Tonight, she wore it like armor. Hair curled, nails done, like someone preparing not for reconciliation, but for court. She expected confrontation. Thought she'd walk in and find me already seated, shifting uncomfortably in my chair, eyes puffy from lost sleep, fingers nervously spinning my wedding ring like a roulette wheel. She'd imagined a version of this where she had control, where she steered the tone, maybe said I overreacted, maybe said I was too proud, maybe reached across the table and murmured that all this, the lawyers, the locks, the silence, was beneath us. What she wasn't prepared for was absence. The hostess greeted her with that neutral warmth reserved for women who pretend not to be seen, and guided her not to a booth, not to the main floor, but to a private room in the back, where a single round table waited. Set for 3. No Stephen, just a flat-screen monitor on a pedestal. And 2 people already seated, both in dark suits, both with notary seals clipped to their briefcases, both with folders already open and waiting. Carol hesitated at the threshold. Her eyes searched the room, confused, narrowing. The hostess smiled, said nothing, and closed the door behind her with a padded click. The monitor flickered to life. Black screen. White timestamp. Living room, 11:18 p.m. 2 weeks ago. Carol's voice, unmistakable, filled the silence of the room. He's so pathetic lately, this almost feels like mercy. Then, kitchen, Tuesday, 6:47 p.m. No, I told him I had a meeting. He still believes I'm mentoring the interns. Brian, I haven't even opened Slack since March. A bitter laugh in the recording. Another cut. Bathroom, 9:53 p.m. last Friday. The video she sent Andrew. The whisper. The wink. All of it. And finally, a bar. Dim, off-camera voice. Andrews. Your husband? He's just an old filing cabinet. Stiff. slow, full of crap nobody wants anymore. Then silence. Then white text. This evidence has been collected in accordance with Clause 6B of the Marital Prenuptial Agreement. All parties involved in the presentation of this material have consented to its legal recording, storage, and use. The undersigned hereby acknowledges receipt of the following disclosures. She hadn't noticed the two notaries standing now. Not until they gently turned their folders toward her, pins already resting across the dotted lines. No one asked her to sit. There was no second chair, no food, no wine list, no place setting for her, because this wasn't a dinner. It was a signature, and the table wasn't prepared for conversation. It was prepared for conclusion. She stood still, trying to swallow, trying to recalibrate, but the numbers were already in. The time-stamped evidence, the verified recordings, the contract she signed years ago without reading the fine print, or worse, assuming it would never be enforced. And as she stood there in the dress she used to hate, in a room that never really belonged to her, faced with the simple, undeniable finality of documentation, she realized something terrifying. She wasn't in control. Not anymore. Friday, 9:04 a.m. The office smelled like recycled air and tension, the kind that clings to glass walls and echoing footsteps, where every conversation takes place behind partial transparency and forced smiles. Carol walked in clutching a triple-shot latte like it was a flotation device, her ID badge still working, her inbox still unlocking with a satisfying click. And in her mind, that meant the worst had passed. She had convinced herself of that. The marriage was dead. Fine. Her sister was out of reach. She'd recover. Carol always bounced back. That was the story she told herself. She was halfway through rewriting a performance review, something hollow about alignment and cross-functional empathy, when the elevator chimed. Two men stepped out. One wore a tailored gray suit, polished shoes, business face. The other was slower, older. Stephen. He didn't glance at her. Didn't look angry. Didn't look like anything. Just moved, with his attorney, toward the HR director's office, Mara. The one who smiled without meaning it. The one Carol used to call the shark in beige. Mara didn't rise to greet them. She didn't need to. Stephen handed her a packet. Thick. Precise. She nodded once. Nothing else. Carol froze. Stephen and his lawyer turned, walked directly past her cubicle. No nod. No glance. No acknowledgement that she had ever occupied a single moment of his life. It took them 27 seconds to leave. At 10:11 a.m., her company login froze. Mid-keystroke. Cursor blinking on a blank comment box. At 10:14, her badge turned red at the women's restroom. At 10:36, the office assistant slid an envelope onto her desk. Didn't speak. Didn't make eye contact. Inside. Her final paycheck. A one-page termination memo. The company letterhead stamped clean in the corner. Reason. Processed under client directive. Supporting documentation on file. Her eyes moved to the client name. She blinked. Threshold West Holdings. It didn't register, not immediately. Then it did. The Vermont property. The LLC she once mocked. Stephen's fantasy retirement scheme, she called it, while sipping wine and scrolling Pottery Barn. He hadn't just documented her. He became her employer's client. He hadn't yelled, hadn't sent a lawyer to threaten, hadn't tried to destroy her. He had walked through the front door of her world. With contracts and timestamped footage, and requested a service, one that her own company policies required them to process. Because she had written those policies. She helped revise them just last fiscal year. And now, those same bullet points, misuse of paid leave, employee conduct in public forums, breach of internal ethics agreement, were being executed with clean language and zero margin for rebuttal. The folder Stephen had handed to HR? It included a whistleblower complaint, internal fraud documentation, video evidence, time card manipulation, screenshots of private communications, misappropriation of discretionary funds tied to her consulting role. Her own language had been used to dismantle her. Her name, printed neatly at the bottom of the final signature page, next to the line labeled Policy Author. She had fired herself. She just didn't know it. Carol sat there, staring at the envelope. No text came in. No notifications buzzed. The coffee in her hand had gone cold. The screen in front of her had dimmed. The office moved on around her, chairs rolling, printers clicking, someone laughing near the break room like nothing irreversible had just occurred. And there, next to client's signature on the paperwork, sat a name she'd known for 30 years. Stephen. No longer her husband. No longer her second chance. Just the man who had stopped waiting and started executing. It was over. Not loudly. Not violently. Not with screaming matches or broken dishes. But with structure and silence and a signature.